My experience with the work of M. Night Shyamalan can be summed up by saying that I've only ever watched his generally accepted to be good films. So, Signs, Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. And I think I saw The Village years ago, but I don't remember that much about it, and the failure of that seems to be more about a poorly focused marketing campaign and an easy to foresee twist ending. So the reviews on it are a wee bit mixed. But I have watched enough YouTube content and analysis and reviews to be able to appreciate that it would not really be worth my time watching any of his generally considered to be bad movies, other than to really enjoy how bad they are and kind of wonder at what kind of lack of perception someone would need to write, produce and then release products like Lady in the Water, The Last Airbender, After Earth and The Happening. Also, I'm probably not the first person to point this out, but did anybody else kind of think that Bird Box was like a remake of The Happening if it was done kind of well and not really goofy? I mean, the Bird Box isn't amazing, but it is a much better version of The Happening than The Happening was. Anyway, the point is that I can now say that I have actually gone to the cinema and sat through one of M. Night Shyamalan's bad films. Yeah, that's right. I had a really hard time sitting through this one. It was frustrating and disappointing and a really unpleasant sit. Now, to be fair, I went into this with mixed expectations. Unbreakable is probably my favourite of Shyamalan's films. It's probably one of my favourite films ever, actually. And I thought that Split was just okay. It wasn't nearly as bad as his other movies. It was fine. It was just the sort of central performance was really, really good. People didn't really know that Split was a sequel to Unbreakable, and it was a nice wee twist in the end, a bit of a surprise, and it got people excited for the idea of seeing this movie, watching Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson maybe, and James McAvoy fight or interact or whatever. So this film, Glass, brings together Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson and James McAvoy and some of the secondary characters from Unbreakable and Split, and has them, well, kind of working off each other. Now, on paper and in the trailers, this film seemed like it was going to be right up my alley. Superheroes and supervillains caught at the beginning of the movie and sent to an insane asylum where they have to go through group therapy and work through their issues. It's like Marvel meets One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, does that or does that not sound like a great time at the movies? But it could not have been plainer that Bruce Willis did not give a shit about this movie because he's barely in it, and when he is in it, he is doing less than phoning it in. He almost never interacts with any of the other characters, and he disappears for gigantic stretches of screen time, and I really wouldn't be surprised if you counted up his screen time and it turned out he was only actually in the film for about 7 minutes. Samuel L. Jackson's character is in an apparent vegetative state for most of the film, but whenever he does start to talk, it's only really to McAvoy's character, and even then, it's really, really corny. Might we ask your name? First name Mr. Last name Glass. No. And I hope you like James McAvoy in Split, because it's pretty much the same thing here, and he is without a doubt the best thing in the movie. He's very entertaining to watch. It almost kind of seems like someone else was brought in to write his dialogue, because it actually seems like well written, and it's completely different from the weird and human phrasing that comes out of the mouths of the rest of the cast. He's funny and intimidating and creepy and very sympathetic, and because of that he seems like he's the only one putting any effort in. But the worst has to be the doctor played by Sarah Paulson. Every time she spoke, I couldn't help myself, honestly. I was shaking my head and rolling my eyes. So much of her dialogue is just exposition, just talking at the other characters and explaining to them the events of their life and all the different things that they've gone through, and all the time in my head I'm just screaming, they know these things. They know that all these things happen to them. They're the ones that they happen to. It would be different if this information was brought out in like a back and forth between the characters. Bruce Willis barely ever speaks, and neither does Samuel L. Jackson, so it's just Sarah Paulson talking at them, but she's looking directly into the camera in a close-up, so it just looks like she's talking to us, just delivering exposition to the audience with like no pretense at all. And she delivers every line in this intense, dramatic, just dead-eyed way that just made me hate her. And she's probably the most prominent character. I would argue that she's probably the main character because, well, based on the basis of screen time, she's in it the most. And Sarah Paulson is a good actress. I don't know what happened here. The film all takes place in this one location, the mental hospital. Now, that in itself is not a problem. You could have had a really good like bottle movie with this concept at the center and had it be really good. But an idea like that only really works if you have the different characters and personalities interacting and bouncing off each other, and drama erupts from that. But that's not made possible in this movie, because aside from one scene where all three of them are kind of together and it's like a dialogue scene, They're all in their different cells, and the only one they interact with is Sarah Paulson, and like I said, she's really annoying. So it wastes the opportunity that they had. You know that scene in the second Avengers film where the Avengers have a party and they're all just interacting there? Did anyone else feel like they could have just watched that for the rest of the film and would have been very satisfied? They're interacting with each other. There's a lot that could come out of that. A lot of things could be explored. Here, it's the concept of the movie and they drop the ball. But this film keeps them all separated in their individual prison cells, so it doesn't work. They don't interact enough for there to be any real drama. Because they're all in just the prison cells, it really makes it look like they just didn't have enough money to do any other locations. That's what it comes across as. Like, this movie had a $20 million budget, which is quite small, but it kind of seems like the majority of the budget just went to paying the salaries of Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson and actually having them appear on screen. Like I said, Unbreakable is my favourite Shyamalan film, and it's probably one of my favourite films ever because of how restrained it is and because of the different approach it takes to handling kind of a superhero story. When you think about it, Unbreakable is very ahead of its time. Like, you could imagine a movie like that coming out now after Marvel has kind of blown up as like a different way of telling a superhero story. But Unbreakable is very ambiguous about whether or not Bruce Willis actually has powers, and if he does, what exactly do they entail? How unbreakable is he? But Unbreakable is a film that asks you to suspend your disbelief maybe a little bit more than most films actually would, because you kind of walk away from that film thinking, well, why didn't he just like take a wee knife and cut his hand or his leg or something to see if he could do it, if he was actually unbreakable or not? But I think that this film, Glass, asks far too much of its audience, because the whole concept is Sarah Paulson is trying to convince the other three that they are not in fact super, they're just delusional. So she eventually manages to convince Bruce Willis that he just imagined that he has superpowers, and he just forgets that he's been doing this for 14 years according to the film. His son has seen him do it. Criminals have seen him do it. The police apparently know all about him, and there have been witnesses to him doing this. Also, the start of the film kind of shows, yeah, that he has superpowers. He falls out of a really, really high window and just like walks it off. There's like simple things that are just like you can like think them away really quickly. Like, there's a whole concept where James McAvoy is put in a cell and there are these big lights that flash, and every time they flash, he changes to a different personality, so that if he ever turns into the Beast, the really strong one, the flash will go off and he'll just change back. But the second that's introduced as a concept, all I could think was just close your eyes, or, you know, wrap something around your eyes. You have like pillowcases and bed sheets and clothes, just cover your face. But, you know, he doesn't. And that's what I mean by asking a little bit too much of the audience to kind of suspend their disbelief. It was kind of like Shyamalan didn't really want to say definitively whether or not they had powers, but he also wanted them to do these amazing things, and he also has a plot that only really works if these people actually do have powers. So the story ends up trapped in this weird middle ground between psychological thriller and metatextual superhero story, which doesn't work. Could have worked if they had picked one, but he tries to do both and it blows up in his face. It's not even a well shot film. I mean, the beginning is actually really good because there's a lot of shots of like Bruce Willis walking and the camera's behind him, following him, like seeing the crowd and things. And there's a bit of slow motion and intense music, and it all sounds really good, and it actually got my hopes up a lot. I was like, wow, this is really cool. But once the plot kicks in and we end up in the insane asylum, the quality of the movie just drops off a cliff. Shyamalan's clearly going for a distinctive, particular style, but it's a bad one. An uncomfortable amount of dialogue is delivered by characters just staring directly into the camera. And entire scenes of two characters talking will play out with the camera just focused on one of them and not really going back to the other one. And it really seems like they didn't have that much space to work with on set, and they were trying to make do by being really stylistic. There are a few scenes, like just moments, where it actually seems like something cool is going on, at least in the cinematography. There's a great scene where the first time that Bruce Willis and James McAvoy see each other in the mental asylum, they're both sitting in their cells and they look up as their doors are being opened and closing, and they can see each other across the hall, and they both realize it's them, and then the doors slam on each other. That was a really cool scene. I actually went, oh, but they are very few and far between. The two orderlies that work at the hospital in the film are baffling to me. It was like the direction they were given was, okay, you two guys are in a straight up horror movie. Just horror. Now act accordingly. So you have things like a guy being all jumpy and nervous around a guy who's in a wheelchair, comatose, and up until this point, and including this entire scene, has done absolutely nothing to warrant a reaction of fear. The same thing happens with McAvoy's character. The orderly's shitting his pants, and all McAvoy's doing is like talking like a woman and flirting and not being threatening at all. Also, the guy is standing right beside the door that's unlocked and can leave at any time, but he's just standing there like really, really scared and jumping and panicking. I don't really want to give away any spoilers, but I will say that this film has no less than 3 twists, and although I was a bit surprised by them, it was not in any way satisfying. It's also a really bad sign when the antagonist and the sort of main arc of the movie are introduced and paid off in the very last scene. That's just bad storytelling. Also, the final sequence is laughably lacking in any basic awareness of how normal people react to video footage, so that anyone who has ever seen any other films or has ever watched YouTube videos and had up until that point actually been enjoying watching Glass would be forced to think, no, that's just stupid. This was a bad movie in my opinion. But I think it could have been good, maybe with a different director, maybe with a change of tone. The fatal flaw for me was that the film just took itself far too seriously. And I just seemed to think that it was so damn clever. And it really wasn't. And I give Glass a D-. A great idea for a movie, but absolutely ruined in execution. I'd say skip this film and wait for the funny reviews and analysis to come out on YouTube in the next year. Thank you so much for watching my review. I hate to ask, but please do like and subscribe. It costs you nothing and it really helps me out. And please comment down below. I want to know if you've seen Glass, what you thought of it, and if you agree or disagree with any of my points. What's your favourite Shyamalan film? What's your least favourite Shyamalan film? And have I been pronouncing Shyamalan right this whole time? Please let me know. I'll be back soon with more reviews, and I will see you then.